Hey everybody, Mr. Vloxel here, and today we're going to be showing you how to host your very own Garry's Mod dedicated server. Now, to get started, you're going to want a couple things, or one thing mostly, is you're going to want to download Steam CMD. Now, Steam CMD you can get right off of the Steam's website. It loads. You want to type Steam CMD in the search bar, and it's going to be right on the top here by Valve Developer Community. Once you get in the Valve Developer Community website, you're going to look for something saying download Steam CMD. It's right at the top of the list. You're going to click that. And you're going to go down here where it says Windows Download Steam CMD. You're going to click that link and it's going to download into your downloads bar. Once that is downloaded, you're going to go into your downloads. And I don't have it downloaded because I already have it on my computer. But there's going to be a zip file there for Steam CMD, and you're only going to see one file, and that's an executable file. You're going to want to drag that out onto your desktop, and you don't want to click it yet. The reason why I say that is because if you open Steam CMD on your desktop, it's going to download all the folders and everything throughout your desktop, and it's going to be a mess. So normally what I do is I'll go in my local drive, and I make a folder specifically for Steam CMD. Now, none of this stuff will be in here when you guys make a Steam CMD folder in there. Once you make your folder right there, you're going to drag your Steam CMD into that folder, and then you're going to run it. Now, once you run it, it's going to go through this command process, and it's going to download the files that it needs to run off the Steam's website. And you should get a folder that looks very similar to what this is right here. Now, once we have Steam CMD, you're going to want to type in a few commands, and I will leave these in the description of the video in the order that you actually need to write them in. First, what we're going to do is we're going to do force underscore install underscore dir for directory. And then before we hit enter, we're going to want to actually make a folder to our Garry's Mod server. Now, I already made one, and basically, again, I just put it on my normal C drive. This is one of my actual servers that I'm running on right now. You're going to want to go make a folder in your C drive or whatever drive that you're using for the server. Go in that. And then you're going to want to make a folder for Gmod or the one that you put in your C drive where you said servers. You can actually just say new folder and I want this to be Gmod. And that'll be your directory. So you're going to want to go into that folder that you made and click up here at the little address bar, and it's going to show you the path for that. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to copy this path. And once you've done so, you're going to go back into Steam CMD and you're going to paste that path. Once that's there, you're going to hit enter. And if you did it correctly, if you look in the folder that you made that path for, you'll see a Steam apps folder. And what this does is once you start the installation of the Garry's Mod server, it's going to download it all into the Steam apps folder. And then once it's done, it's going to extract it into this folder right here where your Gmod is. Now that we have set the directory of the Gmod server, you're going to want to go back over here and you're going to type login anonymous. You can use your Steam profile, but you don't have to. I do know there's a few games out there that do require that you do use your Steam profile because they want actually proof that you own the game to be able to host it. But anonymous works for Gmod. Once this is all done and it goes through its checks and says okay, You then type app underscore update 4020. 4020 is Gmod's app ID. And, well, at least for the dedicated server app ID. And once that's done, you're going to hit enter. And it's going to start downloading the server. Now, this is going to take a little bit, depending on your network speed. This actually goes a little bit slower because I have it throttled, because I don't want to murder it, and I'm actually not going to finish that. Because if I go into my servers in Gmod, this is all right here. It says this folder. That folder don't exist. Now, once this is finished installing, and one thing I forgot to add, when SteamCMD says that it's done installing, you can just close it out. You don't have to keep it open, you can close it. It is good to keep SteamCMD in case Gmod has like a major update or anything of sorts, because once your Gmod server goes out of date, or even if the slightest update off, most of the time it won't let you connect to the server. But now that we have all this, we're going to want to create a text document. And we're going to want to name it start. You don't have to name it start. You can name it start server, Gmodserver, whatever. But usually if you just name it start, it's directly right under the srcds.exe, which helps you find it a lot easier. We're going to want to open up this text document. And then there's something you need to do. Now, in your browser, whatever, you're going to want to type gmod server batch file. And you're going to want to look for this game banana. This is the batch file, or the code, as some people say, that runs the Gmod server that starts it up. You're going to want to copy all this. Need this in order to run the server. And then once you copy that, you can close out of that. And then we're going to paste this into our text document. Once it's in the text document, there's a couple things you can do. You can manage your max players. You can change the map if you have maps already installed. If you don't, I will be showing how to add maps and add-ons in a later video. But for now, we're just going to keep it like this. We're going to go ahead and hit File, Save As, and right at the bottom where it says Save As Type, we're going to go to All Files. And then file name where it says start.txt, we're going to take rid of txt, and we're going to put bat. And we're going to hit enter. And we can close out of this. And if we look up here, we'll see a start.bat file. And the start.txt file you can actually get rid of because you don't need it no more. Once that's all good, we're going to go into something else now. We're going to go into the configuration of the server. I went in the wrong one. So when you're in the main server folder, you want to look for Garry's mod, CFG, and then you want to go down to server.cfg. Now this is already all here, but we're going to actually delete this, and we're going to start from scratch. So to set the name of the server, you're going to want to type host name, then in quotations, you're going to want to put the host name. So we'll just say Voxel's Gmod server tutorial, like so. And that's going to set the host name in your server. If you want to add more configurations, there is actually a config file creator online. If you look for this website, your dev tools, this one's pretty straightforward. Makes it pretty easy. So we'll add the host name, Voxel's Gmodserver tutorial. Server password and Archon password. Don't have to put anything in there. Archon password is recommended because if anybody joins your server and you don't have an Archon password, if they just type Archon and press enter, they instantly have access to every single command on your server. It's basically granting them administrator rights to your console. So you're going to want this to be secure. So we're going to put 1234. Server password, that's only if you want a password on your server upon joining. So when it shows it in the server list, see a little golden lock icon. If you want just you and your friends to be able to access this, you can put a password in so that way only you and them know it. And that'll help you keep it basically, it's like a private server basically. Loading URL. This is pretty much going to be your loading screen as you're loading into the server. Now, I've seen people do a bunch of different things. I've seen people use their forums for the server. I think a while ago people were actually trying to do YouTube videos, but I don't know if that works. Basically forum, or I already said forums, but websites and anything like that. There is some website or loading screen generators or free hosting sites that you can use and add into that, but right now we're not going to add anything in. Allow spray upload. This usually you don't want people to upload because there are players that have some fairly inappropriate sprays and all that. If you're not worried about it, or not caring about really what your audience sees in the server, then you can allow upload. Download method. This is for required files from the server. So like if it downloads textures, models, etc., etc., this is going to be what sends it to the client. Now you can do one of two things. You can fast DL, but there's I want to say partially in-depth setup to that. It's not really hard, but it's not for first starting users and all that. But so we're gonna select direct server download because it's the easiest. Now max file download size. Basically anything that is, say, it says the max 64 megabyte. So if we do 64 megabyte, anything that is on your server file wise that clients need that is under 64 megabytes, it will send to them so they can download. If you set this smaller, then the clients will have to download Workshop and all that stuff. And it basically, if you put it more on the client to be the one to download files from somewhere else, it takes a lot less stress off the server because your server doesn't have to send as much, and it also saves your bandwidth and stuff like that. So, say for an example, like if you have direct server download and you have 32 players in there, and 5 players join at the same time, trying to all download them files at the same time, depending on your system specs and your internet speed, it could be good, it could be bad. If you have lower internet speed and your specs aren't all there, it may cause lagging issues, performance issues, anything of that sort to your players inside the server, and it could also make it crash. So that's basically what the download method and the max files download size is. Logging configuration. Now, this is a good one to keep for any reason that if you have issues with your server starting or Lua issues, which is fairly common when making a Gmod server, especially when you start adding a bunch of add-ons, because some things conflict, some things don't load properly, or it's an old add-on and it doesn't work right and stuff like that. So normally you want enable logging because this will show any issues and it'll keep it stored on the server so you can look back at it and see. Ban logs, this is completely up to you on whether or not you want these to be logged. Me personally, I never use it because I use an add-on called ULX, which is an administration or administrative add-on for admins in the server and so on. So I'm not going to use that. You guys can if you're just going to use Garry's mod consoles, normal ban command and everything like that. That's what that's for. Echo logs. Basically, if you enable this, when your server is running and the console is up, anything that happens in the server mainly will show up on the console or in your user console when you're in game. This is a good one to have, so that way if somebody gets killed or somebody spawning a massive load amount of props or some disconnecting, joining, bans, kicks, yeah, so on, so on. That is a good thing to have so you can see and you can monitor it if you need to. Log file. So this is whether or not you want it to be saved in log files. So pretty much that is if you go into your Garry's mod folder and you go into logs, this is where it's going to be saved. It also gets saved in actually, I think that's the only one. But yeah, that's where it saves the logs. That's a good thing to have because, like I said, then you can look back at them and if you ever get too many logs in there, you can always just go into your logs folder, do that, and then just delete them. You don't have to, but it's there. Single log file. This is basically if you want everything, anytime your server starts, it's just going to save to a specific text file. Me personally, it's best to do it in multi or save to multiple files because say you had something that happened 3 days ago and you need to look back on it. You're going to have to scroll through 3 days worth in one single text document. Now, if you do multiple files 3 days ago, if you shut down your server and you start it back up, you go to that certain time. And I actually think it resets or adds a different log file every day. Sandbox configuration. This is basically all user preference of what you guys want to be available. If you're doing a sandbox server, dark RP, whatever, this is all what you prefer. So, like for me, I don't want players to have God mode. We can have PvP, and we want to enable no clip. And max props, ragdolls, NPCs, and so on all through here. This is all up to you. This is the major one you want to worry about. Actually, you want to worry about a lot of them. Depending on how many people you have on your server and what your server is capable of performance-wise, you want to limit this because you don't want one player to be able to spawn a 500 prop structure and 10 other players to do it because eventually you are going to get performance drops. A good number I found when it comes to sandbox or dark RP and such, 150 to 250 is a good number because players, they do like to get creative and everything, but you don't want it to go too out of hand because, like I said, you're going to have performance issues and it's going to cause problems. Ragdolls, normally I'll set to 2 because that's a lot of physics for a ragdoll. So, say if somebody starts spawning in 50, 70 ragdolls and everything on the server and it's streaming to everybody what that ragdoll's doing, it's going to create some lag. It's going to cause issues and it could potentially actually even crash your server. So normally 2 is a good amount. Max NPCs, it's debatable. It depends on how much you want to get carried away. NPCs usually don't take a lot of resources to do, just because they're in terms pretty stupid. Um, it all depends. Like I said, it all depends on the performance of the server, what your specs are. If it's a higher end, lower end. My server itself is mid range, so max NPCs per player. If I were to host like a sandbox server, I would say we'll do 6. 6 per player, and my server is going to be 64 players. So that's pretty decent amount. I've pushed this server before when I've hosted before. I've had upwards close to like 600 NPCs before, and it was starting to lag. But it was tolerable. Max balloons. It's hit or miss with the balloons. You can spawn a lot, but you can't spawn a lot. It depends how you spawn them. If they're spaced out, usually you don't have an issue at all. So most of the time, max balloons per person, you can do like 16. Max effects, usually I keep this at a low because some effects can get carried away. Like the explosions or the sparks and flames, anything major. Once you get too many of them, you'll start to see a drop in your performance. Max dynamite on an open server where you're going to have a lot of players, usually you set that to 0 because if they spawn one and they spam it enough or do something, it's going to either A, annoy players, or B, it's going to cause issues. Max lamps. Lamps don't usually use anything at all. So, like, if you want, you could always do. I normally ran like 4, 6 per player. Thrusters, about the same, 4. Wheels, again, we'll go 6 for this one. Hover balls, no, we can do 6 for that one. X vehicles. Now this is a bigger one. Depending on what kind of vehicles you have added to your server, whether it's a mod or if it's the Half-Life vehicles. If you start spawning an obnoxious amount of vehicles and everybody else is spawning an obnoxious amount of vehicles, you will get frame drop. Gmod for some reason has always been weird with a large amount of vehicles being spawned. Just even though they don't have a lot of physics to them, it causes issues. So max vehicles per person, usually I'll do 2, and sometimes even 1. And keep in mind, vehicles is also like the seats or the chairs and that, and also um the pod that counts as a vehicle. Buttons, you can really set this to whatever you want. Normally per player, they don't really need that many, so usually 8 to 10 is fine. Now an emitter, these can be a server killer sometimes. If anybody doesn't know what an emitter is, they look like thrusters that you can put down on the ground sometimes. And basically you press a button and it creates an effect. And that's got to do with that effects and everything too. Normally 2 is alright, there's not an issue at all. Alright, now that we got all that figured out and whatever you guys set up, we're going to hit generate code. And this is going to create the code for our configuration file. We're going to want to copy that, and we can close out of this. We're going to go into our notepad that we were on for server.cog, and we're going to want to paste that into the server.cog. Be sure to save this, otherwise it will not work. There's been times, especially with Notepad++, I space it out. I'll put something in or do modifications to the configs files or Lua files, and I'll go to start up the server, and it'll be the same thing that I had before, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I forgot to save the file. Common for me for Notepad++. Normally, for normal Notepad, it asks you to save before you close it, so it's right there. All right, now that we got all this settled, we're going to go into our start.bat file, and we're going to start it. And you'll see two windows pop up. You're going to see the main server, and you're also going to see your server watchdog. Now, anytime the server crashes, for example, if I hit X, it's going to pop up a message on this watchdog. And it's going to say terminate batch job. Well, if you close SRCDS, it'll bring this up. And if you terminate this, it won't restart your server. If you hit no and hit enter, it'll restart your server. Now, if, say, players crash your server, they spawn an obnoxious amount of parts, there's just a lot going on, the server crashes out, this will automatically restart it. So you don't have to worry about like being away and the server crashes and you can't access it. So this basically, it takes care of it. So it starts back up after, it crashes. So now that we got that going up, there's another thing that you got to do, and I have noticed this with Windows 10 Server and also just Windows 10 Home, depending on, or just Windows 10 in general. Depending on what you do, debates whether or not you can get into your server. We have to do something in Windows Firewall. Now, I already have these set up, but I'm going to still show you. You're going to want to go into your inbound rules, and you're going to want to make an inbound rule for the program of SRCDS itself. So to do that, you're going to go into New Rule, and you're going to go up here. Usually program is already auto-selected. You're going to hit Next, and you're going to want to go to this program path, and you want to hit Browse. Now, normally this doesn't pop up automatically, especially if it's your first time in Firewall. Firewall continues off where you last were in your files. So we're going to go into our C disk or wherever you have the Gmodserver. Go in your service folder, Gmod, and then you're going to click srcdx, or wow, srcds.exe and hit open. Then you're going to hit next, and you're going to want to select allow the connection. Make sure all these are checked, and then you can name it. Me, I've always named it SRCDS program because when it comes to port forwarding and everything, you need to sometimes, it depends, you need to sometimes add a rule in there for them ports through with TCP and UDP. These aren't it, but I haven't done that yet, and I can get into my server. Like I said, it's hit or miss. Sometimes it lets you get in, sometimes it don't. But once you put the name in, you put a description if you want, you hit finish, and you'll see your rule right here. And you're going to want to do the same thing for outbound. Now, outbound, you want to be careful because I do everything we did before. When it comes to the action, watch this because it says block connection for outbound. You want to actually allow the connection. That's going to help you find your server. Once you hit allow connection, you're going to hit next. Make sure those are all checked again. And then you can just name it the same thing, SRCDS program. Once those are done, we can actually go into our Gmod that I have not even started yet because I forgot. And wait for this to load. And then we go to find multiplayer game. Now, if you did it right, you'll see that it's popped up here. The only reason this is kind of darkened out is because there's nobody on the server. Now, I guess one thing I forgot to mention, when you use that generator, even if you don't put a password in that field, it actually randomly generates a password, and it's weird. So if you go in the Garry's mod again, CFG, server.cfg, you'll see these lines for SV password. You can leave the quotations there. That way this is there if you ever want to add a password, but you just remove that. And then save it, and we gotta actually start our server. And you can do that just by typing quit in there, and that watchdog automatically restarts it as well. Alright, now we can go into our Garry's mod. Go here, and we're gonna refresh it again. If you look, that lock's gone. That means there's no password. So you're gonna click on that and join your server. And if you did everything right, it should work correctly. Hopefully. Sometimes it acts weird and doesn't always connect right. One thing I forgot to mention. Back at your server console, there's a thing that freezes games with console. If you don't disable it, you'll keep freezing. You got to get in here and you got to press like a letter or something to keep going. So you're going to want to go to properties, and you're going to see this option called quick edit mode. You're going to want to uncheck that. Once that's unchecked, you won't have to keep typing random things in here to keep it going and all that. It actually times out like after a few seconds, and that's why it was having issues. So now, if we go into Garry's mod, we should, yep, we are in the server. And just like so, you are in the server and play with your friends. If, remember, we had a max amount of 2 NPCs, I believe. We had more. Oh, there it is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 NPCs. And same with like vehicles. Like I said, how chairs count as vehicles. That's what I meant. So there's your limitations. The prisoner pod. That's the pod I was talking about. That also counts as a vehicle. For some reason. But you can mess around with your friends and do things and so on. You guys want to know how to add add-ons or want a video on ULX admin, which is this. Helps you manage your server, and you can actually modify all your settings and so on here as well. If you ever want a video on that, go ahead and let me know, and hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. See you later.